Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
My goal is always to create a company that's profitable so I can have great employees that have a great job that will ultimately end up providing more value to my end customer.
Welcome to this episode of the Woodworking Network podcast. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by Wood Pro Expo California. We'll be talking about better ways to run your business without it running you, continuing my interview with Jeff Finney, a veteran woodworking business owner and the author of a new book. But first, I want to talk about what do we value? Almost everything in life orbits around what we value most. But at the same time, we tend not to value things consistently, and we often find it difficult to relate to people who don't see value the same way. Before we go any further, let me explain that by value, I'm covering a very wide range of things. I'm talking about what we pay attention to, what we measure, what we invest energy, time, and treasure for, and ultimately, what provides our direction in life. On the monetary side, and related to woodworking businesses, I think about this a lot. I've been studying pricing in custom woodworking businesses for more than 20 years. More often than not, that pricing is based on value as perceived by the person doing the work, not the person willing to pay for it. Even when the customer is more than willing to pay more because the customer really values the work. Some companies don't detect or recognize that value and end up leaving money on the table. I can't count the times when I've been told by a woodworker that he can't charge more because he says, I wouldn't pay that price myself. Well, let me remind you that you are not likely your own customer. But value is also something that pertains to our time. In the previous episode of this podcast, we talked about business-life balance. So which do you give more value to, your family or your business? Of course, that's a trick question. You can answer family without hesitation and then miss your kid's next soccer game. Or work some extra hours to get a project out the door instead of getting home on time for dinner, and just keep telling yourself, next time I'll do it. In all honesty, I've been guilty of those same kinds of behaviors too. For a great deal of my working life, I've had the privilege of working from home. I could take a break when the kids came home from school in the afternoon to talk to them about their day, play catch for a few minutes with my son, or deal with the childhood crisis du jour. But there were also lots of times that I wasn't there for the wife and kids when I should have been. I can see that more clearly now that I've arrived at what some might call the geezer level in the game of life. But it gives me great pain from that perspective to see younger folks who are making some of the same mistakes I did. It's because they haven't learned to find the true value of things. The value is perceived by the people most closely connected. That means the people paying for something, but it also means the people around you who value you not just as a breadwinner, but also as a valued part of a family and a community. It also could mean the value that your employees bring to your company. To get the most value out of anything, look at it from the perspective of those who value it most. Then carefully analyze what you value most and take your direction from that. Before we get to our interview with Jeff Finney, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. It's really easy for woodworkers to stay stuck inside, focused on their shops and production. But over the last couple of years, the pandemic has forced them to be even more isolated than usual. Now it's time to get out of the shop and resume life in the outside world, especially when it's a chance to network with your woodworking business peers. That opportunity is coming April 27th to 29th in sunny San Diego as the Wood Pro Expo joins with the Closets Conference and Expo to offer an unparalleled opportunity to boost your business with intelligence on techniques, tools, and technology. Let's get face-to-face again. Learn more at woodproexpocalifornia.com. See you there. Now let's get back to my interview with Jeff Finney. What's the biggest mistake that you ever made in your business?
Oh, the biggest mistake. Man, I've made so many. The biggest mistake I think I made in my business early on, around that recession time, that 09-10 area. Before that, I had taken on too much debt for a small company. We were growing, and we were kind of that 18-foot tall and bulletproof mentality, and we were just, growth was all that mattered, and it didn't matter what it took. We were going to fuel that growth, and we had took out too much debt, and we got ahead of ourselves, and it about drowned us. I mean, it about made it to where we didn't make it through. Literally, we ran out of work at the end of 10, and we didn't know if we was going to come back to start 11. That was really tough. So I learned a lot from that. I learned that as a company, we've got to be disciplined and keep some cash around for the slow times, the bad times that are going to happen. And if you've had your eyes open and aware of this last year, you've seen material prices just not only through the roof, but not be available and create these unprecedented times. And last year was tough because we were busier than we were ever been. Every single month we were making sales records, which made it very tough to keep up with these escalating material prices, because you're writing contracts last month for work you're going to do next month that you don't have material for yet. So it was very hard it made last year very difficult to keep a hold of your cash and not just have to use it all in inventory. But fortunately, we had a little bit sitting back to where we could get through that. So I would say that when you're growing and when you're scaling, you got to be real cautious and really aware of your cash flow situation, and be just be debt. You have to have debt for certain things. There's smart debt and there's dumb debt. If you're just taking out debt because you need cash today, it's pretty hard to justify. If you're buying a new machine and you can justify it with extra production, that's probably justifiable. But be careful about what you do. Be careful about your leases that you take out. Some of these leases that they push at the shows and stuff, you really need to look at that, because those are really tough on you when times get hard. They're not in your corner, in other words. So I would caution other people against that, too much debt and the kind of leases that we take out for our machines.
What do you think is the most common mistake that woodworking manufacturer owners make?
I think that's a tough question. That's a really good question, though. I think they make the mistake of never venturing out beyond their comfort level of being a day-to-day operator of their business. They never look at what's just past that, because they got into it for the craft, but they ended up with a business. And I was the same way. I mean, I started out with the craft just because I liked building things. I liked that. But then what I really found out was what I was really passionate about was running the business. And that's trumped my love for the craft of woodworking, and I think that most business owners get comfortable in that spot where they're making a good wage, they've got some consistent sales. But the problem with being complacent and just being okay with that is you're not really creating a company that's got value, and you're not creating a company that's my goal is always to create a company that's profitable, so I can have great employees that have a great job that will ultimately end up providing more value to my end customer. And it's kind of like the perfect scenario, and I think it's our responsibility as business owners to have a profitable company that's doing more than just providing the owner a wage. It's providing, a great living for your employees, and it's providing great value for your customers.
I think a lot of companies do not wrap the into their business equation the employees and the customers the way they ought to. They don't see value from their customers' viewpoint, and they don't value their own employees and the contribution that their employees can make to the business too.
Yeah, that's right. And if everybody would if all owners, especially manufacturing, and cabinet making is the perfect place for lean manufacturing. And I used to never understand and I know we're getting a little bit off the business side, but it wraps into it. Lean is such a great thing to look into no matter what size of business you are, because if you do it correctly, lean is not about doing more with less. Lean is more about continually improving, eliminating waste, with the end result of adding value for your customer. That's really the end result of lean, is you're adding the optimal value to the customer. The customer doesn't pay for our scraps of wood in the bin. The customer doesn't pay for the dust on the floor, and the customer doesn't pay for the screw ups in between. The customer pays for that piece of furniture or that cabinet, that kitchen cabinet, or whatever they're paying for. That's what their value is. So whatever we can do to maximize that it's our responsibility. That's being good stewards of the business. So lean just it puts that on the forefront, and it puts that it just makes it kind of gives you the guidelines to doing that. So I used to look at lean as just having less employees and doing more work because of it, and that's not it at all. It's more identifying waste, eradicating waste, and continually improving to add value. So that's definitely something I think owners should look into. And I'm sure you've read the book 2 Second Lean or been around.
Oh yeah, Paul Akers.
Paul Akers, and I've got to know Paul a little bit over the years. Great guy, and but the what he's given to the woodworking industry through not just his company but his teachings in lean, I don't think you could put a value on it, because it's affected so many businesses. And there's no doubt to put my business. It was kind of the answer to the question. I couldn't figure a few things out as far as I was always efficiency minded, but I never could figure out how to branch that into making that throughout the whole company. And that just kind of answered some of those questions and filled in the blanks.
Well, there's efficiency, and then there's efficiency that responds to the customer's value.
That's right.
And that's different. I mean, I think the classic example is that you take a simple product like a screwdriver, and there's only two parts to the screwdriver, the handle and the shaft. And if you have two different production lines making those parts, if they both want to be as efficient as possible, well, what might happen is that you get more shafts than handles, or the other way around. Yeah. But you can't have a screwdriver unless you've got an equal number of both parts.
That's right.
That's totally wasted efficiency.
That's right. Yeah. You can automate waste just as easy as you can automate efficiency. That's right. But if you always look at the end game of creating value for your customer, that's the answer to those questions or those dilemmas.
And when we're in a business that's making household or business furniture or cabinets, something that's being used in an environment, the value the customer sees may not have anything to do with those items. Actually, it may have to do with the problems that those items solve for them. Like they always hated their kitchen before, and now they're going to have a custom kitchen that's exactly what they want, or they have a retail environment and they want something that's going to help them sell more products and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't have anything to do with what you're making in your shop.
That's right.
But that's what they're paying for. And if you don't understand that, you're not going to be able to create that customer value.
That's right. And something else I noticed, you asked kind of what operators make a mistake in or have trouble dealing with. And one thing I noticed in my local market, and I'm sure this is like this in all markets, and I know it's like that in a lot of markets because of the studies that Woodworking Network does on all of the bidding. The bids and things they do for different kinds of projects, whether it's millwork or kitchens, and those are always very interesting to me because of how across the board they are. It's you get bid ranges from $10 to $10,000, on an item, and that always is interesting to me. And in our local market, what I've noticed over the years is there's 2 or 3 shops that are pretty good sized shops. That always undercut us by a tremendous amount, 20-30%, and they're still breathing. I can't understand how they're still going, and I still can't understand to some extent But the reason they're breathing, the reason they're still going is because they're not providing any value. They're just providing a price. And I'm a firm believer that if that's the kind of company that people run, it's going to catch up with them. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And it'll either shut them down or it'll cripple them to the point that they realize that that's not sustainable. And I feel like the business, as a craft as we are, we get into woodworking because we the love for the wood, not for the business. And it's very hard to learn business principles, because it seems like it's a trial by fire. There's not, it's very easy to learn wood because you can just say, well, I cut it too short this time, so I better cut it longer next time. It's very easy. It's a very A-B thing, either works or it doesn't. But the business there's a lot more gray area in there. And not bidding jobs profitably to where you can have a sustainable business, it ends up hurting everybody, not just the bad companies. It hurts the good ones too, because it puts us in this position where we think we're doing something wrong because we're bidding it correctly, and that's something that's always baffled me. But it's also it's taken me a lot of discipline these last few years to really just get to the point and be like, okay, I know where our company has to be to have great employees, to have a great product, to be on time. This is what it costs. And finally to get that point of just being like blocking out the noise of the other shops bids, that was a tough realization to come up with, because I was always in the camp of I can never raise prices because I'm going to lose my customers, and it turns out to not be that way. If you're a company that provides true value, it ends up not being that way at all.
Well, like you said earlier, learning to say no is probably one of your most
Vital.
Powerful tools.
It is. It's highly underrated.
Yeah. So your book again is called "That's It, I'm Fired: How
Yep.
Owner-Operators Can Manufacture Their Product Success and Freedom." Where can folks get that book?
Easiest place is on Amazon. You can type in that title right there. I'm sure that you can have a link in the show notes if you need to, or you can go to thepushthrough.com, and that's thepushthru.com. And it's got the links to all the bookstores right there on the webpage. And there's also the link to all the podcasts. And, the podcast is kind of one of those pet projects for me. It's either on or off. I do a few episodes and then I get busy with life and then I come back to it. So it's just kind of a fun thing that I do. But there's quite a few episodes with similar content of what you and I are talking about today, Will. And of course my email's on there, and I'm always looking forward to, if nothing else, I wrote this book to get those little emails where somebody sent me and said, hey, I love this part of your book, or I really got some value out of this chapter or whatever. So please reach out to me, good, bad, or otherwise. I'd love to hear your comments about how it affected your business, if at all.
Sounds really good, Jeff. And I appreciate you coming on our podcast, and best of luck to you, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Will. Sure appreciate you.
That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, Wood Pro Expo. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.